Welcome to the KingsCrowd Startup Investing Podcast. I'm Sean O'Reilly, and joining me today is Sam Bogoch, co-founder and CEO of Axle.ai, a software that combines the power of AI and machine learning to remotely search and manage your video content. Axle.ai boasts over 700 customers worldwide, including Paramount, CBS, NBC, the New York Yankees, and Price Waterhouse Coopers. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
What's it like working with the Yankees?
Well, it's actually been a blast. They have a group inside the Yankees that is responsible for doing hype videos. I mean, most people I didn't
Gotta get
that.
excited.
It's not for the audience. It's for the players.
What?
So think of it as like scouting meets we're going to pump you up.
Yeah.
Right? So their job is to basically produce these videos for the team. That's like, okay, here are the next two series you're going into. Here are their strengths and weaknesses. Here's how they did against our pitching last time. And then it's like, go, go, go. And they got highlight footage in there. And they basically their job is just to get everyone really jazzed to win that next series. And this is actually a thing, like it's an entire video team within the Yankees that does this. And they use our software to pull together all those highlights, to pull together like quotes from interviews, and to turn it into something kind of actionable for the players.
Very, very cool. So you've got a crowdfunding round on Republic right now. I just checked, it's going pretty well.
Yeah, really well, yeah.
Got, like I said in the intro, over 700 customers, a lot of big names. That's all very cool. And you did it all with a distributed workforce remotely. And that is what I really want to talk to you about today, because nobody planned to enter the world that we entered into last spring.
Right.
Yep. Not to talk about myself, but the last time I ate out at dinner until pretty recently was my birthday last March. And we had the restaurant to ourselves, like in DC. And I was like, to my wife, Angelica, I was like, honey, thank you for renting out the restaurant for me and all that stuff. But like, a little bit of dark humor there, but
right.
You know, what were you going to do? So take a step back. When did you first found your company? And then was it meant to be fully distributed? How did all this occur?
Very good question. We actually started the company in 2012, but then pivoted to take in the AI component in 2018. So for the first 6 years, it was kind of a boutique, not quite a consulting company, but we knew where our customers were. We were based in Boston, and
where we were founded. Go Boston.
Where we were founded. Yep. Yeah. And so we kind of knew what we were doing, but we also knew that we couldn't grow that fast. And then when we saw that AI was going to have a really significant impact on video and started developing our own capabilities in that area, we're like, okay, this is a growth story. And that's when we started raising outside capital and really hitting the accelerator pedal. It turns out that to staff a company like this with, fellow Bostonians or Silicon Valley people you can't do it cost effectively, because you're competing with the Amazons and Googles who are recruiting those same people.
All in Boston or in any other, tech hub.
Or Silicon Valley, exactly. So we said, let's start looking for our folks in more disparate locations and lower cost markets where their cost of living isn't so high.
So when you were a consulting firm, when you were a consulting firm, did you just have local Boston people?
It was mostly Boston people, yeah. We had one guy on the West Coast and so forth, but primarily Boston area, yeah.
That's awesome, okay. And then you're like, man, we need tech talent to do X, Y, and Z. And then, so you must have had this realization one day that like, I need this guy in the Ukraine, or I need this guy in Silicon Valley, and I'm just gonna pay him $10.99 and call it a day or something. Like what?
Exactly. No, and I should say we've always had one founder who is actually out in Silicon Valley, one of our tech guys. But we knew we had, this was when we were like a 5-person company. Today we're a 25-person company. And the only cost-effective way to ramp that without tons of venture capital money was to bootstrap, to really watch our costs, and to recruit folks that were affordable but really smart. So we have a core development team in Latvia, and that's gone super well for us. We've built that over time. And then we've also been able to recruit really talented people in places like Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Lagos, Nigeria. I mean, literally all over the place.
How are you finding these people? That's what I want to know. Like,
well, there are job boards.
because I'm
There are
hearing this more and more, you realize, like, this
yeah,
is,
of course.
you know,
I mean, and the thing is, so COVID has taken what we did before, which was kind of like a fringe thing to do. And now it's like, why doesn't everyone do this? I mean, if you hire someone 50 miles away, they're not going to want to meet with you in person and sit in an office. So who cares if they're 500 or 5,000 miles away? It's equivalent. And then you can really look for the best people and the most affordable cost to get the business up and running. And that gives you a huge competitive advantage over companies that are still paying for big offices, even though they're empty most of the time, and paying for, only high cost workers.
Right. So as a early stage startup investor, I'm worried about a lot of stuff because, we all know that, let's say the majority of startups don't make it to what, this is partially a numbers game. And at this point, I'm investing in the founder, I'm investing in the idea, I'm investing in the technology. And your company is a great example because you've got a Rolodex of awesome customers. The reason they came to you was because of the technology, your algorithm. Do you have a catchy name for your algorithm? I don't know, but
well, it's not really one algorithm. It's actually a platform, and then we can plug in new algorithms as they become available.
So, but as an investor, you want to make sure that stuff's protected, like there's patents, all this stuff or whatever. Have you ever had to talk to an investor, or just how do you quell the worry that, if they're hiring somebody in Argentina, the tech could be stolen, or just any kind of thing? Because if you have a bunch of people in an office in Boston, for example, I have to assume that psychologically that's easier to control. Is that ever been a problem for you at all?
Well, it's interesting. I used to live out in Silicon Valley, and I did startup stuff out there for 10 years. And oddly enough, I never felt as insecure about my employees as I did then, because they're constantly
poached on the street.
Yes, exactly. Everybody's got like 20 recruiters swarming all over them because it's Silicon Valley, right? That's what people do. It's like the average job duration out there is 18 months. That average.
Seems long.
Right. And I mean, it's probably come down.
Long. 18 days now, Sam.
Exactly. So it's like, how do you create a stable work environment? What we've been able to do is build a team that over time has been very stable and very solid. Again, because these aren't high turnover markets. We're paying them very well by local standards. Also, they're incredibly psyched not to get dragged into an office. This was a big thing even before COVID. But like, there's still companies out there in parts of the world where like they expect people to show up at 9 a.m. during COVID.
Oh my gosh.
And so working from home has become a luxury, but like really a luxury that everyone wants. So we have a lot of advantages in terms of the IP. Obviously, we have everyone sign confidentiality agreements, contractor and employee agreements, et cetera, as needed. It's also true that in the case of our company, there isn't like one special sauce. Like, we're not like Coca-Cola with the vault, or it's not like we have some hive of patents that we jealously guard. Really, a lot of what we do and our competitive advantage is derived from customer focus, quick innovation, and essentially grabbing market share based on what our customers need. And so, if one person leaves, it's not the end of the world. We also use things like GitHub, which is a distributed source repository. Again, this is just common best practices, but essentially everybody checks in their code to GitHub. So if they were to leave the company and try and take something, I mean, sure, they could take their piece of it or so on, but it's not, we have 10 developers now, and each of those 10 sees, anywhere from a 10th to a 5th of what the overall product is.
So you've worked in Silicon Valley, as you said. How have you and your team replicated the, just like the cultural feel of the magic of what happens with working in person?
It's hard, and I can't claim that we have. I think our pace is probably today, 70% of what it would be if we were all in the same place.
It's like, I hate to talk up the value of water cooler talk, but like sometimes it's just a couple of people talking with a marker board, then you get a crazy idea. And
absolutely.
No, this is a legitimate question, even in our own company and with me and my team. I'm like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, and so there are tools for that. Actually, there's some very interesting online meeting tools that are trying to reproduce what the in-person experience
The
is. So we've
magic.
been, yeah, but they don't. But they, slowly but surely we're getting there. And I think that the real opportunity is to be realistic and to say you're never going to get 100% of that, but what can we accomplish?
Right, for sure. So you guys were already hiring. What are some tools that you used in the job boards to find somebody that you need in a pinch? Because the people listening to this podcast are either early stage investors that are going to want to know if a company's doing best practices, or they're founder themselves. And I don't know, we're all figuring this out as we go along. Do you have any, I don't know, juice to share?
Yeah, well, I would say that things like typical major boards like Indeed and even Craigslist, by the way, but
You're
also
kidding me. I
no,
found my
but
first apartment on Craigslist.
exactly, it's still out there, and you still find interesting people. And then also there are local job boards in each country that
Right.
are worth a look.
And you must be doing this all the time. Like you never stop posting. Yeah.
It's pretty true. It's like, what comes next? Which country? What needs do we have?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Are you doing any so obviously, you're better, you've done the Silicon Valley thing, and it used to be you'd meet somebody in person, they'd maybe have a couple hours worth of interviews, you might make them an offer after that. Now I'm hearing these stories in in the software industry in DC here in particular. There's like 7 rounds of interviews on Zoom. There's homework assignments.
Yeah.
How are you torturing your employee? I'm kidding. No.
It's a very good question.
What are you doing to balance, Yeah.
The one thing to bear in mind is hiring coders is very different from hiring any other type of employee.
Yeah.
It is a black box experience. All these people that are creating these huge interview gauntlets are missing the point, because at the end of the day, you will never know until that person comes in, physically or mentally, and writes some code for you. And so I've
You have
just
them write
learned
code, right? Like,
yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Because like, what are you're going to judge them on their personality? They're coders. Like,
Right.
A lot of
I
them
don't care
are
if they have a personality. No, I'm kidding.
Well, they're hermits. A lot of them are like, on the spectrum. They don't want to deal.
But they're geniuses at coding, and that's what you need. So
exactly.
yeah.
So, but some of them just act like they're geniuses and are actually terrible at it. And you only find out. So we typically have a 30 to 90 day trial period, because there just is no other good way. And putting people through a ridiculous set of interviews is only fooling yourself and them, because you really don't know whether it's for real until you know. And obviously there's other jobs that are also a little bit like that, like sales, where it's like a lot of salespeople talk a good show, but what you want to do is put them into the arena, see if they start showing like they can sell something. They don't even have to close a sale in the first month or two, but they have to give you the right trends and indications, have the right attitude. You can test them out in front of customers and have some joint calls. So again, the 2 hardest ones that I've experienced are coders and salespeople.
Yeah.
And then for everything else, like marketing and customer service and so on, that's more linear. And I think interviews are much more fruitful there.
For sure. Okay. That's a lot of good stuff, by the way. Like,
sure.
Yeah, I'm actually like, I'm hiring right now too. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to just have them write something and it'll be fine. That's really good. So taking a step back, do you think, so this is like a macro question at this point, you hear all these rumors of like COVID accelerated how business is done with technology and just all this online stuff by 5 or 10 years. Like eventually this would have happened, but this, really gave a shot in the arm, and Zoom stocks at 400 or whatever. Actually, it was down today, I saw. We're recording, by the way, on August 31st, if anybody wants to date the podcast. Is this just the beginning? And even where companies prefer to have you in person, like you hear these stories about like Goldman Sachs, like they're like, no, get back to the office now kind of a thing.
Yep.
are we just in the first inning of this distributed workforce thing, and I can just go buy a house in Montana and enjoy my mountain views, or what? Like, what's the?
It's too hard to say for sure. Obviously, there's going to be some new equilibrium, but if you had asked people 6 months ago, when the vaccines were just kicking in and there was optimism that we were past it, then everyone would have said, yeah, we're all basically going back to work. And now it's like, ooh, this feels more like a steady state. It could take years to unpack what's going on. I not only have our experience as a company, but also our customers' experiences. Actually, by sheer chance, that editor that I mentioned, the lead guy on the Yankees project, he lives in LA.
Boom, there you go. Which I'm not surprised by, because that's where you would expect a ton of video editors to be. But
that's right,
nevertheless,
that's right. Yep, and there's a great talent pool in New York too. But sure. I guess my point is, like, almost every media organization, and we sell largely to media teams, is confronting the same thing. They were already seeing the growth of freelancing. They were already seeing an increasingly distributed workforce. People didn't want to sit in a cubicle when they could edit from home. So this trend was already probably 30% of the way there. And then COVID just cranked it all the way up to 80 or 90. Are people going back to work? Absolutely. But I would say, especially in these creative environments where you're talking about creative talent, and they want to work where they want to work, I think the percentage of them that will end up in a traditional full-time desk role is certainly less than 50% and maybe less than 30%.
Man, so what are your, you've got quite a customer list here. I just named a few of them. Price Waterhouse Coopers, for example, which I'd love to know what their video team does, but what is that what they're telling you? Like, what are your customers saying? Like, yeah, you're gonna have to do a Zoom call with this guy instead of doing a conference call with all of us or whatever. Like, are the vast majority of your customers having to build remote workforces now?
Absolutely. And even the ones that are, you still have an in-presence. Like, for instance, we were just on a call with Madison Square Garden earlier today, and they said,
which is a venue in New York that has games and concerts. Like, that's it.
Of course. And so they, if anybody is dependent on people showing up in person, it's them. And they said, hey, could you come in for a meeting? They actually want me to meet in person. This is like the first customer that has asked me to have an in-person meeting.
This was like last week or earlier today?
Earlier today.
Wow.
And it's because they have a new guy who came on board. He actually came over from NBC, very sharp guy, and he's trying to get kind of a handle on some of their systems issues. It's like, hey, could you come in and meet? And it's like, oh my God, I can't tell you how long it's been since somebody has said that to me. So, and for instance, in our industry, the big trade show is called NAB, National Association of Broadcasters. It's not just for broadcasters, it's for
there's
sports
always
teams.
ancillary stuff. Yeah.
Well, no, like sports teams, religious organizations, corporates, all the, governments. Anybody who uses video goes to NAB. The attendance used to be 100,000 people a year.
Is this in Vegas or?
It's in Vegas, yeah. And it'll be very interesting because they had to postpone it this year. It's coming up in about a month. And a lot of people are saying it's going to be 10 or 15,000 people.
That is an 80% drop, man.
Easily. And maybe they're wrong, and maybe it'll be 30 or 40%. But I guess the point is that a lot of people have just realized, I do not need to do all this stuff. I do not need to pack into the Starbucks at the LA Convention Center, for 30 minutes waiting for my latte, when I could just basically be on the web and talk to my vendors remotely and use some of the platforms that are there. And certainly our software has benefited from this because it all runs in a browser. Historically, people who did this kind of work would actually hand each other hard drives. Like, I keep one of these as by my desk as a prop.
Oh man,
this is how they would communicate. They would be like, here's the footage,
here's a terabyte of video. Like, yeah,
right. It all goes back to the days of the VCRs, and they would be like, here's the videotape.
Yeah.
So that became, here's the hard drive, and it's pretty much been that way until a few years ago. So for them to be able to break that model and start actually logging in from home, working remotely, it's been a huge shift. And in the course of doing that, they've realized, why do I need to go to NAB? It's crazy. Like, I'm not going into the office to do my work. Why do I need to go to a big, sweaty, crowded trade show to learn about the latest technology.
Get jet
So
lag,
I'm
yeah.
not, I don't want to I don't downplay what NAB will be in the future, but there's no doubt that it's going to be a fraction
Right.
of what it was in its heyday.
So this next question, so this is like entrepreneur to entrepreneur in a way. Is it possible that this brave new world we've just entered is more profitable for businesses? Because like you're talking about a lot of costs just going down, but then like, do we pass those costs on to our customers? Like what, this isn't like you the head of Axle.ai, but it's like, just as an entrepreneur, do returns on capital go up? Like what does this do to our society?
It's an interesting question. I think efficiency goes up, and I think the US in particular is very well poised to benefit from this, because we do have a skilled workforce and we are able to communicate effectively, you know, from wherever we are. It's harder in some other environments. Also, our economy is not that heavily dependent on manufacturing, and people have been bummed about that for years. But moving, you know, if you're a service economy, you can be very nimble on this. So I think we have some structural advantages, and I think that some of these efficiencies are really going to bear fruit in the next couple of years. But again, it will come back to some kind of equilibrium where, you know, there will be costs for offices, there will be commuters, there will be traffic jams. There already are some places. Here in the Boston area, it's already getting pretty.
Has traffic gone down?
It went down, but it's coming back up.
I've kind of noticed. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Here in DC, so I moved to DC in 2013, and the traffic here was, I mean, it wasn't as bad as LA, but it might as well have been to me. Like it was, and I don't know. I don't think it's come back, and I'm just like,
no, I'm sure it hasn't there. Again, Boston's just fluky, but but it's steadily going to grow, no doubt. And anyway, I think the economy will benefit, and I think individual people will benefit. If you think about it, the
quality of life goes up for sure.
Exactly. I mean, we were all wasting an hour each way.
That's why I hated,
And also, it's not just that. We as a company used to have to visit our customers a lot. Again, that MSG call is the first in-person visit that I've even been asked to do. Well, I think I'll go, sure. Yeah. And I have other people to visit in New York. We have a lot of customers there. But I used to be like the human cannonball flying back and forth between New York and LA.
Oh man.
You know, if this is Tuesday, this must be the Bay Area kind of thing. And I am really delighted to have that off my plate and to be able to do calls like this one. It just frees up more time for better uses of time, I would say.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. So before we end the podcast here, Sam, I did want to give the opportunity to just tell the listeners just a little bit more about your company, what your vision is for the future, and the value you bring to your customers.
Great, thanks. So our vision of the future is, if you look at it, we are at the intersection of three very high growth areas, which are video, AI, and remote work. And each of those is double-digit billions in size, and each one is growing at double digits per year. So we're at kind of the white hot overlap of those three things. And we think that is going to grow extremely fast over the next 5 to 10 years. And we would like to be the company that essentially drives a lot of the solutions in that space, helping people solve this problem of being at a distance from each other, having very large video files, and needing to search and manage those files. That's our vision. And we think it's going to be a huge, huge opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sam. This was an awesome conversation. And again, your raise is live on Republic right now, I believe.
Yes, it's republic.co/Axle, AXLE-AI.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you for calling in. I actually hope to have you on the show again next time. We can talk about more about distributed workforces and everything. But congratulations on all of your success, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.